Thanks, Grace. And I am so glad to be back here with you and really want to take a few minutes and share with you a couple really simple, practical, research-based tools that I've been sharing with parents and teachers. They're using these tools in homes and their classrooms. And part of how we set up bringing yoga on and off the mat into homes and schools through Yogini's Yoga for Youth and our trainings is we often will teach, sometimes I think when people think of yoga, they think of rolling out a mat and, cool clothes and being in a class for a period of time. And the truth of the matter is you don't have to have 45 or 60 minutes to wait to do some movement or some breathing. You can do it anytime, any place. And that's really part of the beauty of it. So I also want to say that part of the goal of these tools is two-part. One, the breaths, the movements I'm going to share with you here, they do in fact help calm the central nervous system, either by changing the way we're breathing or some of the movements you'll see, we're going to compress joints and muscles. And that does have a physiological calming effect on the body, the mind, all the way around. The other part of it is what these tools also provide, and I love how Jordan says, they often help her press pause. And for her, it's allowing the sensory input and the brain where she's moving, described how she's moving quicker than her brain's catching up to. It creates a little space, that pause, for things to come back together, and where she can then have the opportunity to create an intentional response, right? So even in your own life, think of a moment where maybe you felt what I call the heat of anger, and you're noticing it in your body, and before you know it, you are just screaming or dropping the F-bomb. Plenty of stories I can share with you of how that happens in my home. Even because I have all these tools, and sometimes, I don't catch it. I don't catch that heat of anger, and, I yell at my dog or my kids. What's different now is that I catch it. And I then can do the tool and then talk through it with the person that I'm with or my pup. So I'd love to give you an example of how one of these tools has made such a difference, and then we'll dive right into them. So one of the schools I worked with, and I did research there, was a Montessori school just outside of Houston. And the teacher had been introducing these different tools: flower power breath, child's pose, counting breath, Shanti hug. We're going to do them in just a moment. And so teaching them to her class, and then creating a peace place in her classroom. And in the show notes, I can include some pictures of these. So they teach the pose, then they put the pose in the peace place in the classroom. And it becomes, and then the child and the teacher then have access to then do these poses, these breaths, off the mat in their daily life. And the analogy I like to use here is, if you think of James Harden, right? You all know I love James Harden, Houston Rocket basketball player, changing the game with his three-point throws, right? Like over 60 points in a game, unheard of, until he just started making three-pointer after three-pointer after three-pointer, right? Well, guess what? He wasn't born, right, making those three-point shots. He learned how to make them. He then went to practice and practice over and over again. So that's the peace place. And then he was able to take it into the game and make those three-point shots. So learning these tools is similar. Someone's going to teach you. You have that space, that peace place in your home or your classroom. You get to practice. It's a scrimmage. And then all of a sudden, boom, you're out in real life. That's the game. And being able to access these tools to, again, pause when you're noticing maybe you're tired or you're angry, you're just not feeling your best, and you want to curate your response. So you enact one of these tools, gives you that pause, kind of recalibrate, maybe it gives you the energy you need without, grabbing that extra cup of espresso, and you can continue on in your day, right? Or it helps you regain control if you've had a moment and you just, you lose your cool. It happens. All right, friends, so here we go. Oh, I almost forgot the story. So at this Montessori school, I know I get so sidetracked. At this Montessori school, a student was on the playground. She was about 3 years old, and she'd been learning these tools in the classroom and then practicing them in the peace place. And the teacher shared with me that one day on the playground, this girl came running at her, like steam coming out of her ears, fire shooting out of her, nose, not really. But the child was very angry. And as she approached the teacher, and instead of, think about the things we often say to kids when they're angry, like, don't be angry, or, why are you angry? Or you're like, calm down. And instead the teacher said, I see that you're upset. What can we do to help support you? So she didn't say you're wrong for being upset. She just offered just a very open, and didn't give her the answers. Just said, what can we do to support you? That child dropped to the ground and did child's pose. And that's the one where you're kind of sitting on your heels on the ground and your stomach is leaning over your thighs, your forehead's resting on the ground, or maybe resting on your hands on the ground. So you're kind of in this ball, like face down. So child's pose. One of the reasons child's pose is so comforting to the body is your whole body is compressing itself. It's like giving yourself a bear hug. And so that really helps the body just slow down. There's also some sensory input in the world of yoga. We call that pratyahara, where when your head is down, and even in the idea that sometimes when you're tired, you want to put your head down on a desk. And part of what's so lovely about that is you're removing your sensory input of sight, and so the whole world just slows down and becomes a little bit more calm, right? So this child on the playground drops into child's pose, and then sits up, and does some of her flower power breaths, and then stands up, brushes her hands off, and walks away calm as a cucumber. Now, could you imagine if our world leaders knew how to enact flower power breath and child's pose on the go? I think we would have a very different world, don't you? All right, well, you know what? You and me together, we can start to create that ripple effect. All right, so you already have one tool, flower power breath, from earlier in the program. And the next one I want to share with you is called belly breathing, right? Now, some of you may know the formal term for this, which is diaphragmatic breathing. And your diaphragm is right under, so find your sternum, and then go down a little bit. And right under your sternum, your diaphragm is kind of in there. So a way that we can teach diaphragmatic breathing, or belly breathing, also little kids, I call it balloon breath, is to take your kind hands, and I'm kind of waving, wiggling my kind hands, and I'm going to place those right around near my rib cage, kind of near where the sternum is, right? And what I want to do is breathe in such a way that my whole rib cage, front, sides, back, because I'm a three-dimensional work of art, right? I am awesome all the way around. And when I breathe in, I want to expand all the way around, and then breathe out and let everything soften, right? So if you can imagine, even instead of just breathing in shallowly in the front of our lungs, really think about the fact that we want to breathe into the lungs on our back body and our side body, and really allow that to grow and expand and then soften. So you also can just place your belly on your hands, maybe like Santa Claus, and breathe in a way that allows your belly to grow big, and then breathe out and let your belly soften. And doing 2 or 3 of these can really make a difference in how you're feeling, the quality of your thoughts, quality of your energy. And part of what happens then is your diaphragm expands when you breathe in, like a baby does. If you've ever seen a baby breathing, lying on their back, that belly goes up when they breathe in, and it goes down when they breathe out. That's how we naturally want to breathe. And then, who knows what happens over time. Maybe And of course, those moments with our society and social media and just the whole social way we culturally construct and share with people, especially women, quite honestly, that we need to like suck in our gut or not show that we have these beautiful bellies, which then impacts how we breathe, right? You see how this like big picture body image like really is so detrimental. We can really be a move to stop that. So again, belly breathing helps our diaphragm, our diaphragmatic breathing, helps that diaphragm expand, also can kind of gently provide some massaging to our internal organs, and that also can feel good. All right, so belly breathing is the first one. Ball breathing, and for this I'm going to grab my Hoberman sphere. Now if you're listening to this, you can't see my Hoberman sphere. I'm going to include it in the show notes. It's a colorful ball, and when you open, you can slightly open it, and it's just beautiful and colorful and fun to look at. I actually learned about this in an adult yoga class. This is a great tool to use with kids because it also provides a sensory input while breathing because you focus on it. It's also a great tool to teach the art of focus. You know, I often feel like we teach kids how to read and write, and we don't actually teach them what it is to focus. So we can say, like, notice how you're really concentrating on this. That's what it is to focus. Sometimes we like to focus on certain things. Sometimes maybe we don't want to focus on our, say, homework, but we still have to focus on different things to be successful. So here's how the Hoberman sphere, or ball breathing, I call it, works. You breathe in, again, and this also helps represent the three-dimensionality of your lungs, your ribs, that diaphragm, and then you breathe out, and you just allow the ball to connect your breath and movement. So breathing in and out. It's very nice to breathe in through your nose. Your nose provides a natural filter for the air. It also helps humidify it for your body. And then breathing out through your mouth or your nose. Or sometimes if you kind of close your mouth and put your tongue on the roof of your mouth, it feels like you're breathing out of your gills. So let's try that. So the great thing about the Hoberman sphere, also I've used it in classes where we might pass it from child to child, or I'll use it even as a behavior management opportunity where I'll say like, hey, Sally and Sammy, like you guys are doing a great job today. Here, you take the ball. Would you like to lead us in ball breathing today? Now check it out. If you don't have a Hoberman sphere and the person you're working with knows what a ball is, an example, point in case, when I was teaching at a yoga full-time at school here at HISD, I had a student who was really struggling with his emotions and energy levels. And I was like, hey, you know, how do you feel? Like, do you want to feel differently? Like, how can I support you? And he's like, yeah, like, I'm like not happy right now. And I said, well, what's your favorite sport? And he said, football. And I said, perfect. So I said, well, let's create a football with our hands. So if you can imagine like putting your fingertips together and kind of creating what could be, you could do a round ball like a basketball or more of cone shaped at each end. So I'm creating like a football. And first gently press your fingertips together. And again, notice how your joints are getting some pressure and your muscles, even in this very simple of like pressing my fingertips together, I'm getting some of that physical feedback that's calming when my joints and muscles get compressed, right? So here's this little boy. I'm like, all right, let's do football breath. Kind of like flower power breath, but with a football. But here we're focusing our eyes also on our hands so that when we breathe in, we're going to let that football, grow big. And I'm moving my hands away from each other. And as I breathe out, I'm going to slowly bring my hands, my football, back together. Breathing in, expand. Breathing out, letting them soften back together. Again, so any of these breaths, you know, part of the idea of with education, there's a kind of educational theory called constructivism, and the idea that you start with where the learner is, or if you imagine scaffolding. So you want to start with where your kiddo is. So if your child knows what a ball is, this ball breathing is going to be super effective, right? Like you don't want to start your 3-year-old with trigonometry. You're going to start them with where they are and what makes sense to them. So like if this boy or this person didn't know what a ball was, that would be a little challenging moment. There would be no anchor or no scaffolding there where that person already was. So think of a sport and activity that your friend knows about. With my son Cole, we turned flower power breath into baseball breath, where we would imagine grabbing a bat and taking that bat back as we breathed in, and then exhaling, swinging that bat in slow motion, imagining we're hitting the ball out of the ballpark, and then out of the ballpark, Cole, where all your families and friends cheering you on that home run. Like he loved that. And when he was, I guess, in about the 5th, 6th grade, he often was a pitcher and often was the closing pitcher, the closer, a little pressure there. So he said often on that pitcher's mound, he would imagine himself doing baseball breath, right? So I picked baseball breath. He knew what baseball was, so he was already on that scaffolding, and it just was something I could build and work with him. So check out, know who your kids are, your students are, and you'll find ways to connect breathing in and breathing out to support them. Another thing I want to say about the breath is to keep in mind that when we breathe in, that is energizing for the body. And when we breathe out, that is calming. So often when we're upset, we might want to say, take a deep breath. And while I certainly want you breathing, keep in mind that it's the slow exhalation that's what is going to help calm the body down. All right, so there you've got a couple breaths now. You've got flower power breath. You've got belly breathing and ball breathing. One more breath that can be really helpful is counting breath. And that's where you breathe in, saying to yourself, 1, 2, 3, 4, and out. 4, 3, 2, 1. In, 2, 3, 4. Out, 3, 2, 1. And you can do that in different, of course, counting in different languages. That can be lots of fun. You can count quietly, ask a friend to count quietly to themselves, or you could provide counting for a group of people. And that's also very helpful because you're breathing, you're focusing on the breath. You're also using that prefrontal cortex, the part of your thinking brain, to remember the numbers and the counting. And again, so something like that can also create that pause, that shift, the refocus from maybe whatever is agitating someone and helping them refocus. Again, keeping in mind feelings aren't right or wrong, they just are. We want to support people in knowing that feeling happy and feeling sad, that both are fantastic feelings. We just tend to prefer to feel happy. It's given like priority. All right, I'm going to give you 2 movements to do that you can tie any of these breaths to. And the first one is going to be hand tap. Now, hand tap's one that I once taught somebody, a teacher who was in a school in Philadelphia. And man, it came in such use during that day. He described there was a student, a high school student, in with the principal, and things were getting heated. And that teacher was like, oh my gosh, all I could hear was you whispering, hand tap, do hand tap. And so the teacher said, hey guys, do you want to try this? And he said within minutes, the principal and the student were no longer like heated in anger, and they were calm and they were sitting down. So check it out, here's hand tap. You can inhale and reach your arms all the way up to the sky. And then over your head, you're going to clasp your hands together and bring your hands down and rest them on top of your head. Now, I don't know that you're going to learn this pose in a yoga class, and really, who cares? But part of why hand tap is so effective is if you've ever done acupressure, that kind of work, acupuncture was the word I was looking for. Well, there are some acupressure points on your head. You don't even need needles. So just by resting your hands on top of your head, you get that kind of calming sensation that goes down into your body. And to paraphrase Dr. Maria Montessori, when our hands and mind are occupied, we have the greatest opportunity for success. also, like for teenagers, you look kind of cool doing this. So often I call this the too cool for school, you know, kind of pose, just hanging out. All right. So what you can also do, in addition to hand hat, is what we call Shanti hug. Now, Shanti in Sanskrit is the word for peace. And so it's simply hugging yourself. You can add a breath to it. You can breathe in, bringing your arms up. Exhale as you lower your hands down, crossing them in front of your chest, and give yourself a big bear hug. Now, this was one that Jordan really liked when she was a kiddo, because she would say, like, Mommy, I think I can feel my dendrites misfiring. Can you give me a bear hug? Let's breathe in, take our arms up. And exhale, bring them down, crossing them the other way. And so eventually I would say to her, well, I can give you a bear hug, Jordan, and if I'm not there to give you a hug, you can ask your teacher or you can give yourself, right? That's where that self-regulation comes in. You can have this in your pocket, give yourself a hug anytime. Now, what's cool about to unpack Shanti hug for you. So when our hands, when any body part crosses the midline, so if you imagine there's an imaginary line going down between my eyes, down the center of my face, down the center of my body, when your hands cross that midline, it actually wakes up the thinking part of your brain, this front part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex. So I'm waking up my brain by crossing the hands over that midline, and then by hugging myself, right, I'm getting all of that joint and muscle compression that's helping me to feel my best. Look, guys, those are just a few of the tools that you can, boom, you can use on the go, you can use when you're traveling, at dinner, on the bus. Easy enough to do that even, you know, an 18-month-old kiddo can do some of those, trust me. So take what you like, leave the rest. I really encourage you to give them a try. And then, hey, check it out. Let me know how they're going. You can always hop on our Yoginos Facebook page. And that's, you know, Facebook/Yoginos. We're also on Instagram, other forms of social media. You can find us. And let us know how they're working. And let us know also if you have any questions and other ways we can modify them to meet the needs of you and your family. Thank you so much for being here with me and Jordan today on the Oh Amazing Way podcast. Have a fantastic day, and we will hope to see you next week. Thanks so much.